The COVID-19 pandemic was declared a national emergency in the U.S. 427 days ago, and the virus has killed more than 580,000 Americans. But amid that trauma and hurting, some good news.
The CDC announced that they are no longer recommending that fully vaccinated people need wear masks. This recommendation holds true whether you are inside or outside. I think it's a great milestone, a great day.
Meanwhile, the Capitol insurrection was 128 days ago, and this week, House Republicans removed and replaced Representative Liz Cheney from her leadership post for repeatedly speaking out against former President Trump's election lies. We'll dig into that in a moment, but first, what do these new COVID rules mean for American life, and what challenges still lie ahead for the Biden administration? Joining us tonight are four top reporters: Kasie Hunt, Capitol Hill correspondent for NBC News and the host of MSNBC's Way Too Early; Manu Raju, chief congressional correspondent for CNN; and joining me in studio, we're so happy to be in studio, Eugene Daniels, White House correspondent for Politico and co-author of Playbook; and Susan Page, Washington bureau chief for USA Today and the author of the new book, Madam Speaker. Thank you so much for being here. Eugene, I want to start with you. White House officials tell me this decision about facial coverings was made because they're following the science, following the CDC. What are you hearing about what really went into this decision, and how close are we at all to turning a corner and maybe getting back to normal life?
It was kind of head spinning, right? It was like 6 weeks ago when the head of the CDC was emotional on camera talking about how scared she was about where we are. And it was just 2 weeks ago when the outside masks went away. And so I think everyone's kind of was a little bit surprised. And folks I talked with at the White House, they said they were mostly surprised because they allowed the CDC to make that determination and weren't involved. And so, you were at the White House yesterday and they had to move around and change. They added a press conference for the president. And so I think what we're hearing on whether or not we're turning a corner soon is that they're hoping that the numbers stay down, and they are really cognizant that the fact that people don't have to wear masks in person, outside or inside now, may lead to people getting vaccinated.
Mm-hmm.
There was no incentive, a lot of people say, for people to get vaccinated if they had to do the exact same thing they were doing. So they're hoping that that's going to happen. But I've talked to some health experts; they're not completely sure because there's that 30% of white evangelicals and Republicans who say they're never going to get vaccinated. So the White House has a lot, and the administration have a lot of work to do to get those people to sign on and actually get vaccinated, even as we start seeing like life returning, like us being here in the studio today.
Yeah. Well, Eugene is hitting on a key point, which is that there are people that are still hesitant to have the vaccine. Talk to me a little bit about what you know about vaccination rates on Capitol Hill among lawmakers, and how might this announcement change their calculation and, of course, the calculation of people living in their districts?
Well, it's a very good question because, of course, COVID has really changed the way business is done on Capitol Hill, especially in the House of Representatives, which is, of course, much larger than the U.S. Senate. But we already saw the Senate leader, Mitch McConnell, the minority leader, going without a mask as soon as these guidelines were released. There still are mask requirements on the floor of the House, and that's probably set to become a pretty intense political debate because Nancy Pelosi is keeping those rules that way until she says all House members are vaccinated, along with the staffers that have access to the floor. And while they say that essentially 100% of Democrats have been vaccinated, there are a lot of questions about how many Republicans have. There are a lot of offices that won't confirm one way or the other. And of course, this is contributing to the tension overall that's already caused so much strife here. And Yamiche, I will say the one thing I keep hearing, both from those who I talk to in my own everyday life, but also lawmakers who are trying to figure out the right approach, what advice to give their constituents, and from some of the doctors that I've interviewed over the course of the past few days, are questions about what to do about people who can't get the vaccine yet. So there are a lot of parents out there who are concerned, have a lot of questions, because while perhaps they want to get their kids vaccinated as soon as it's safe, they can't yet. And kids, of course, need an example from their parents in order to wear masks. So I do think we're entering something of a period of uncertainty here, where some people in the country are still going to have a lot of questions about what to do.
Well, Susan, Casey is talking about the uncertainty that everyone feels, and there are these people that I know that are very worried about taking off their facial coverings. Talk to me a little bit about what you're hearing about how this will all work, enforcement, verification, because of course this is about fully vaccinated Americans.
Well, it's something we've never experienced before, right? We've never had anything in our lifetime like the pandemic we've just come through. But certainly, I think most Americans are really eager to get on with things, to not have to wear a mask. And if anything, I don't think there was a sense the CDC was acting too rapidly. I think there's been a sense that the CDC was being too cautious, that they were in fact not following the science, which says there's very little risk if you're outdoors, no need to wear a mask there. And the vaccinated people are protected, so they can take off their mask even if they're inside. They can hug their grandchildren. They can resume having some kind of July 4th picnics. This is, of course, the issue on which President Biden is going to be judged. And we see that he has once again beaten the timetable he had set for himself. If he can beat the timetable he had set for the percentage of Americans with vaccination, that would be a very good and helpful step for him.